with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Yeah, thanks for joining us a little early this morning. It's some schedule conflict, so we're going to get it done here today. How you doing, Josh? You just getting out of the sack? Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah,
well,
been a rough morning.
You know, it's that party lifestyle you live. I don't doubt it.
I wish it was.
You wish it was?
No, that'd be a lot easier to explain than I was exhausted yesterday.
Really? Well, you had a lot of shows yesterday, did you?
I had a lot of shows, and then immediately after, I went to go help a friend move, and that was just not a good idea.
No, you know, that's testing the limits of friendship, you know, and I had a pickup at one time. It's like, all of a sudden, I had all these friends. Hey, will you help me move? Anyway.
I can't tell you how many times. I cannot.
Well, you got your pickup out there, and I know you're here because you got it, you know, it's pretty apparent which one is your pickup. I'll put it that way.
Used to have a lot more on it. But.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that, too. We have Bailey Mullins here. He's going to school me, I guess, on what's going on in the world, and that'd be fine. I could use some schooling. You doing all right these days?
I'm doing okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Hopefully your parents will join us like they did last time.
Right.
Now I know who Tammy is. So
You do.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you sent me a message about something that vandalism had happened to your truck.
Yes, sir.
I had to say I'm on your mother's side on that deal. Yeah, right. I'm with Tammy on that one there because she's like, do you really have to do this? Why don't you explain what happened?
Yeah. So I was driving in Arlington. I was helping a buddy of mine. He's staying with me for a minute, and I went to Arlington to help him get some stuff from his house and bring it back to mine, help him move in a little bit, and. I'm driving down the highway in Arlington. I had, my Charlie Kirk stickers on my truck, my Back the Blue stickers, my Trump stickers on my window. And I'm driving down the highway and I hear a gunshot. And then almost immediately after, I see and hear my glass from my back windshield just crumbling on my toolbox. And, I pulled over, I loaded my firearm that I had and, I was ducking. And just focused on getting home after that.
So did the bullets actually enter your cab?
I could not find any.
All right. Well, holy moly. Just because you think it's because of the stickers you had?
I think it's very likely in today's climate.
Well, the only stickers I'm going to put in my car is I brake for liquor stores or something like that. I'm not going to, that is true, though, because I've heard similar stories. And on both sides, to be fair, you'd see a Harris Waltz sticker and the car's all keyed up, and stuff like that. So it's, I also saw plenty of cars that had Trump stickers on it or Ted Cruz or whomever, and they're, vandalism or whatever, or nasty nose left behind. I think that's really unfortunate.
I believe so.
Yeah, very, not just dangerous in your case, but just unfortunate that people want to react to other people's opinions so strongly they're going to vandalize their property.
Of course.
That's nuts. When I see a sticker supporting a candidate I don't like Harris, I just say, well, that's their problem, and move on.
Right.
I don't, it's like their opinion isn't so important to me that I have to react that kind of way.
Right.
But that's not everybody. Some people in this climate are a little bit nuts, and that's unfortunate. It really is.
It is. I think it's beautiful, that we live in a country that we're allowed to disagree. There's other countries, Iran, murdering thousands of its civilians for, protesting, not agreeing with the regime. And I believe, it's beautiful that we live in a country that we can have freely differing ideals. And
don't want to have people take it too far and their reactions. One thing I worry about is not so much like countries like Iran, but countries like Great Britain, whom you can go to jail for saying certain things.
Absolutely.
Like if I got on here and gave the gospel message, and I could, in British law, be prosecuted for hate speech.
No, of course. And just like the woman that was arrested for silently praying outside of a facility in the UK. And
this Finnish politician who's doing time in jail for publicly speaking the gospel. And it just that's the ones that bother me most. I mean, we have some sort of expectation that a authoritarian regime like Iran is going to react the way they do. But you'd like to think that democratic societies, as they purport themselves to be, allow this kind of freedom of speech, but not all of them do.
Right.
Canada's the same way. If I got up there as a pastor and I said something that offended somebody in some subgroup, they could be arrested. And that's just craziness. But anyway, what's not craziness is the sponsors. So we need, before we dive into the deep end of the pool, let's talk about them.
Get into it.
Yeah, our place. I bet you've been to our place. Everybody's been to our place.
Many times.
Yeah. What's your favorite there?
Probably the chicken fried steak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chicken fried steak. Can never go wrong.
You know, that's the thing is you go in there and you say, I got to try some of these other things, but I like the chicken fried steak so much that I just don't want to miss my opportunity to have it. So I've had their hamburgers and they're really, really, really good, of course. And the breakfast is always good. About every other Mondays, the men in my Sunday school class and I get together and we try to solve the world's problems. And after a while, we say, forget it, let's talk football. And also Gina's, I was there last night with a couple of buddies from my B&I group, and it's great as always. And it's always good. It's got some in the refrigerator. It's going to be good when I have it for lunch later. So, but it's always great. And I saw Otto there. Every Monday they do a chess night, and I think his grandson plays, or somebody that related to him. I think it's his grandson, and so he's there for that, and it's always a lot of fun. And it's just the kind of place you want to go to. It's a family-oriented place. A lot of little kids, but it's got good music, and it had all the sports on. It had baseball and the soccer, so you're good to go. Are you into that World Cup?
Not really. I don't watch a lot of soccer, but
I watched World Cup, and I like nation versus nation soccer, and I've gotten used to watching the English Premier League because it comes on the weekdays, like at Friday at 2 or something like that. So it's afternoon sports, which you don't always get. So that's always a good thing.
If I do watch, it's mainly the big events, you know, for the social aspect.
I've been watching the World Cup as much as I can. I mean, there's going to be a couple games on this, but there you go. Also, I'm getting off the topic. My buddy John at Old Pro, 817-734-2756. Old Pro is here in town. It's a Burleson company, and you get a lot of roofers out there that they walk the neighborhoods trying to get business. And okay, it's free enterprise, but still, you want to deal with people that you know and you can find if you need them. John will come inspect your roof for free, and it's really only about 10 minutes because he usually can tell you within 10 minutes whether your roof is good to go or need a little repair or need a new one. And if you do need a new one, you can trust him. I'll put it that way. He's not there to upsell you. He's not there to find a loose shingle and say you need a whole new roof or whatever. So 817-734-2756. And my buddy Jeff, he was one of the gentlemen I had pizza with last night. 817-781-0546. He's with the Wethington Agency. He's the man to talk to if you want to buy and sell. He really, really is knowledgeable about real estate. He's on the show about once a quarter. We just talk real estate and rates and changes in Burleson, things like that. How long are you native to Burleson?
Originally, I grew up in Arlington. I lived with my mom. I moved to Burleson whenever I was about 7 or 8. Moved in with my dad, got into sports, that kind of thing.
Right. I remember when you were here with the mayor, you were talking about your football days. You were like the star player or something like that. I was
one of many. Yeah. We had a lot of great people on our team.
And what position do you play?
I played offense my first 2 years, or my first year. The last 3 I did defensive end and fullback.
That sounds like fun.
The old Burleson High School.
Yeah, you betcha. The Elks, which, when I started teaching at the high school in 1990, the fall 90, Burleson had won like 8 games in the past previous 10 years. And then a new coaching staff came in about my second year, and they really improved things quite a bit. And it was this town was upside down because Burleson Elks is finally going to the playoffs and stuff like that. But anyway, 817-781-0546. Jeff will set you right up. Also, my buddy Rod Lewis at the Burleson News Express. His issue's coming out probably this morning, I know he puts it together Mondays, and so you may have it in your mailbox right now. I know it's probably going to be by noontime. It's going to be at the 54 different locations. He and his brother Ken put it together, and it's a good local newspaper. And you're probably before your time at the Burleson Star, but we used to have a daily newspaper, and it was great to have because your picture probably would have been in it multiple times, being the big shot that you are, But the teachers always like looking at the arrest reports.
Right.
Right. Circling. Oh, I had that kid back 2 years ago. I could see that one coming.
I think Burleson Star I was in once or twice for Pee Wee, and then I did Meals on Wheels, helping people out. whenever I
Pee-wee
was younger.
football. I remember when I was at Pee Wee football, and I was in Richardson, and they had a local paper like that, and I saw my name in it, and I thought it was astounding. I was like 10 years old or whatever.
Right.
I scored a touchdown, and it, it was a little paragraph write up, but probably somebody's mom put in, and it was like, I'm in the newspaper, right? Then got a bunch of copies, sent it to my grandpa, that kind of stuff. All right. So anyway, pick it up and check it out because it's good local news. And it's that time of year. I think our cool days of summer, if that such a thing exists, are now done. It's going to be hotter than heck until about mid-September. True Climate, Heating and Cooling, 682-244-2019. Speaking of cooling, were you able to practice in that indoor facility that they built over at the high school?
They always bring out the good stuff whenever you graduate.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, right. Yep. So I wondered if you were part of the squad then.
No, I saw it being built, but never got to experience it.
You got to have those August workouts.
Oh, yeah. They definitely dangled it in front of the head.
Yeah. But try True Climate, say it right. True Climate Heating and Cooling. Will Cobb, his sister Emily Cobb, they'll sit you right up. They have a $99 a year plan that you could take part in and get discounts. And if you need a new unit, it'll give you a significant discount. So check it out. Also, one thing that's going on tonight, I don't know if I'll be able to get, hopefully people get to see it, but hopefully y'all get there. Tonight in Cleburne, over at 1511 West Henderson Street, they're going to have one of the workshops for property tax issues. Kim Jones has the Property Tax Justice Foundation. And what she's going to be talking a lot about is talking about the evaluation process of property. I bet you have an opinion on property taxes.
I do.
Okay, we'll ask you about that in a minute.
Yes,
but,
sir.
All right, but anyway, she's not so much there to try to generate opposition to the property tax, even though I know what her opinion is on that, and you could probably guess what it is.
Right.
But it's more, her issue is more about the evaluation process and how inconsistent it is,
Right.
and how to protest the system. The protests are, the deadline's coming pretty quickly. I know that one deadline is next week and another one's like 2 weeks after that, depending on when you got your evaluation. And she'll lead you through the process. And she's been on the show twice, and man, it must be a very hot topic because those two shows by far have been the two most viewed shows I've had this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, say, Josh, is the screen working? Because I don't see any. Talk about that one, about the one for anybody who wants to jump in and ask questions. Because I'm quite sure we'll get a couple of his family members there dropping opinions. Saying he's so smart. I'm so proud.
Yeah, should be working.
It's working. Okay, good. Well, and we'll see Miss Tammy on, I'll bet, sooner or later. But anyway, since we jumped off on it, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your hopes for, because this isn't just, I didn't just pick you out at random. There's a reason why I thought you might be interested in being on the show.
Right.
So tell us all about it.
I'll start, from the beginning. I was an avid, I was avid in sports in high school, and I played football, basketball, did powerlifting, track. Never thought that I would have a passion for football. And I had 8 football scholarships out of high school. I turned them down for some personal reasons to go to Tarleton State. And
Who was talking to you?
I had Texas State in Tyler, Texas.
Texas College?
Texas College.
Yeah,
Texas
yeah.
College.
Yeah.
Texas Wesleyan, Midwestern State, a couple others smaller.
Yeah.
None of the big bucks though. But
Nebraska didn't call. Penn State didn't call.
I actually had Kansas Wesleyan. They wanted me to come, but my Hazelwood wouldn't cover out of state.
What was funny is not funny, ironic. I had a lot of ball players in my classes, and some of them are pretty good ball players like yourself, and they get letters. I remember these two guys got letters with Joe Paterno's signature at the bottom. And
wow.
Yeah. It was Penn State, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, Joe Paterno is recruiting me, and I didn't want to have the heart to say, how many letters they must have sent out? And that probably was auto-signed.
Auto pen.
Yeah, but I didn't want to bust their balloon, so okay. But those poor boys really thought Joe Paterno was watching tape, says, get me that kid, Burleson, Right. But, for them it was a great experience. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so you went to Tarleton, but you also went to the Army, did you not?
I did. I went into the Army March of 2020.
Just in time for COVID?
Right when COVID hit, actually. Ended up getting medically discharged. You know, I never, how do I say it? So I always wanted to serve in the United States military, but, you know, I always, you know, had my first up plans. You know, it was always, you know, on the back burner. Whenever I got to college, you know, I was never really an academic. Had to definitely teach myself how to be an academic. And, you know, I went initially for nursing. You know, I wanted to be in labor and delivery. And one day my mom had the conversation with me. She, you know, she had the conversation that, you know, there's going to be some babies that don't make it. You know, do you believe your heart is going to be able to handle that? And I didn't think it would, and not something, you know, I want to become numb to.
Right.
So I decided to, you know, change my course. And, you know, I was, you know, still taking my core classes, didn't really know what I wanted to do after the fact. So I went into the military, and whenever that didn't work out, you know, I kind of threw my hands up, you know, because, you know, even, you know, my backup wasn't working. You know, it kind of led me in a depressed state for a minute.
So it was COVID that kind of was an impact on your military opportunities?
It was. We had a big company outbreak that happened weeks after we got there. And there was a bunch of people that popped positive in our platoon and in our company. And I didn't have COVID. You know, they tested me, but because I slept within a certain distance of somebody, they sent me to quarter with a sick population. And I ended up getting long-term asthma because of that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, my 2-mile time went from like 1550 something to over 22 minutes. And at that point, you know, they tested me, and once asthma was on my paperwork, I was on my way out.
Yeah, I've heard that a couple of times, that that's a deal killer.
Yes.
My cousin's son is an officer in the Air Force, and when my son was much younger and he was kind of kicking the idea around, the idea got shut down real quick because he had a few asthma episodes when he was younger. He doesn't have asthma now, but there you go. But once it's on your record, you're done. And so your long-term ambition, though, you want to be involved in politics in some manner.
I do. Political commentary, eventually work my way to Congress. So the foundations I'm laying now are definitely going to be important.
You mean you want to be a member of Congress?
I do.
You want to join that circus?
I do.
You know,
my mom doesn't understand it either. You know, she definitely.
I'm not trying to bust your vision, but man, you know, I've been teaching about Congress since, you know, the 80s, and it ain't the same institution, but it's never been Sunday school. All right, you know, we think our Congress now is just terrible,
right?
And I think it's worse, but it's never been a place that's been, I don't know, everybody holds hands and sings Kumbaya.
It's a mean life, and that's something that my mother, you know, she told me, you know, are you sure this is a mean life? And you know, somebody's got to do it.
Well, I will say, you know, when I first started teaching that Schoolhouse Rock version of Congress,
right,
may be a bit sanitized, but it was roughly kind of what happened. Now it's nowhere near what happens.
Right.
You know, the idea of a congressman going up there and making a difference, it's harder now because the leadership on both sides, both parties, has gained so much control over the whole process that this idea of going out there with these great ideas and working them through the committees and hopefully get them on the floor, that kind of thing for debate and discussion, that has been kind of gone by the wayside in the last 20 years.
Which is one of the main reasons why independents never really gained traction, independent runners.
Independents always have had a difficult time, but this idea, you know, we don't have independents in Congress. I mean, Bernie Sanders likes to think he's an independent, but he hadn't voted with the Republicans in his life.
Right.
You know, and same thing with Angus King of Maine. He's another, quote, independent. He's never voted with the Republicans. And so that's a charade, to be truly independent. And the thing about it is, this has always been part of Congress. The great Sam Rayburn of Bonham, this great speaker in the mid-20th century, said the operating phrase in this institution is to get along, you go along. You know, so when you join, I assume a Republican.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I can't see you as a Democrat at all.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you just sooner spit it out of your mouth than say it, but it's all right. No, but if you go in Republicans, they're going to, let's assume you win, they're going to pull you aside and say, now here's your marching orders. You think you really want to be part of that?
I think in politics, there's there's going to be times when I'm approached, and I think it's a cat and mouse. It's a push and pull. I understand how politics works, and I'm gonna have to play nice in some aspects. And once I become the larger you get, the more leeway you have. And the smaller voices, I believe, they vote with their party, but I believe, the larger you get in politics, you start to have your own voice and things like that.
But you look at the voting process now, it's almost all party line votes.
Right.
And what's really changed a lot also is the primary system, because you're not getting Republicans or Democrats in this process that have some other ideas. What I'm getting is, what we get now is I have to be so Republican or so Democrat that there's no wiggle room in my thoughts. I don't have leeway.
Right.
If I'm going to run in this district to run for Congress, I'm going to have to be so Republican, I'd make Abe Lincoln blush, that kind of thing. Or if I was going to go say, East Fort Worth is a Democrat district, I'd have to be so radically liberal just to get through the process. And you'll sort of see that today, because they're having primaries in New York, and there's like 4 in New York City, 4 Democrat socialists running, and they got Mandami behind them and all this other stuff.
Lord, yep.
Yeah. And are they going to win? This is New York City. Who knows, right?
Right.
That's barely on this planet. But the issue is that it's very, very difficult to truly represent all the needs of your constituents in this situation because of the primary process creates far left or far right. Do you think you can navigate that and still maintain your vision of what you think should be the case?
I do. I truly do. I believe, good ideas are good ideas. In instances like John Fetterman, he agrees and disagrees with things on both sides. John Fetterman, he calls it where he sees it,
and gets a lot of abuse for it too.
He does. But that's the name of the game, and you're going to regardless.
Well, if you could navigate all that and be truly committed to the constituents, which I believe is the first duty of the House of Representatives.
Absolutely.
And represent all their interests, not just the interests of the Republican Party of the state or whatever else, then God bless you. But it's a tough road to navigate. And what you'll get also is we've seen this in the last 2 primary seasons. Mr. Trump has gotten involved and endorsed certain candidates, and you've had semi-moderate Republicans lose their primaries,
right? Like
John Cornyn, and that's the reality of modern day politics, particularly when you have a personality like Mr. Trump, which is very dominant in the Republican Party, and that's obvious, right? But it works the other way with the Democrats. If you're running as a moderate Democrat, you're not going to get money from Nancy Pelosi. You're not going to get money from Chuck Schumer and that kind of thing. So it really bothers me that politics is a team sport in Congress, and that's how you get things done. You get working majorities. But when they get to the point where there is no thought process involved, there is no consideration about impact on their local constituents, I was told this is how I'm going to vote. That's not the way the system's supposed to work.
I agree.
Now the founding fathers, they were under no illusions about how this works. They did not want political parties, but they knew that they were a fact of life.
Right.
If you ever read James Madison's Federalist Number 10, I cited that in my class. He says, look, there are only 2 ways to prevent parties from forming is mandate everybody have the same opinion or try to control what the impact they have. So let's do the latter instead of the former. So it's just, I never saw myself as a member of Congress, but I think even now, people like yourself who want to do the right thing, do good by their country, this environment's made it harder for that to happen.
Right.
But you're still wanting to do it. I'm not going to talk you out of it.
I do.
I'm not going to talk you out of it at all.
I think back in the day, I think political parties were necessary. You know, you didn't have the media like we have now. So, you know, you had, you know, mail by horse and all these things. And, you know, having parties made it a little easier. But now I don't think I mean, you have people that would never vote Republican just because it's a Republican. You know, they don't look at the ideals. They don't look at character.
Would you say that's true for people who would not vote Democrat?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Trying to be fair and balanced here.
Right. Of course.
The Republican Party is, as of today, has left me concerned in several ways. But I've been a lifelong Republican, but the last 2 or 3 elections has been tougher.
Right.
Because I am somebody that votes not just on the policy, but also the person. And
Right.
it's been tougher. Plus, and I think a lot of that has to do with that primary system. I could do a whole show on that. You know, how our primary system now is creating this division, and then you get gerrymandering thrown in with that. You know, it's even tougher. But you know, the thing about it is, though, I've taught history for all my life. We look at today's politics and think that's nasty. It's terrible. But you know, it wouldn't. You know, Sunday school back in the Gilded Age era. During the federal era, as they call it, you know, the first 2 or 3 terms of office of Washington, Adams, Jefferson, that politics was just as nasty and mean. It just we didn't see it. You know, we're not seeing it on the nightly news, or not seeing it on talk shows or radio or whatever else. But politics has always been an unpleasant business,
Right.
and sometimes that unpleasantness. I mean, you look at the 1850s. Hell, they were going to the chamber armed. You know, knives and guns. And so it's, you know, it's always been a tough business. Ted Roosevelt said it ain't beanbag. So, but you want to do it.
Of course. Yeah.
Well, what? Okay, so let's assume that you're preparing to run. What would be the main planks of your platform?
I think one of the things that you're talking of my, you know, beliefs, things that I would want to change.
Yeah. What would you emphasize? Like you're trying to, you know, introduce yourself to the public. What are the issues that you think are the most important that you would emphasize?
I would emphasize our prison systems. I don't know if you know, but you can invest in our prison systems. Foreign leaders, you know, foreign governments, they can invest in our prison systems like stocks and bonds. Our prisons aren't filled. They don't, you know, make the money. I think it incentivizes propaganda. You know, you divide the people, more people end up in prison. You make more money.
That's interesting because that was most people's their first opinion would be Iran, economy, et cetera. But your first thought was the penal system and the privatization of it, which I assume you're opposed.
I believe so. My focus is more on the people here. I'm not, you know, an isolationist by any means. I understand, you know, foreign affairs and things like that, but you know, just like I forget what the law was, but it used to, I believe, be illegal for, you know, media to knowingly lie to, you know, the American people, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's libel and slander. Those are illegal, but it's very hard to prove it. That's the issue. It's not that it's, you know, the media can lie knowingly and maliciously and get away with it. If the Dallas Morning News prints something malicious or slanderous about you, not as a politician or as a person, you have some recourse, but you're going to have to prove they meant to do it. All right, that they meant to damage you, and that's very hard to do.
Right.
Okay, and you know, Trump talks about you know, suing the newspapers and all that else. The reason why he gets away with it is not just because he's the president, but he has the ability to restrict their access and restrict their possibilities. You know, Paramount and CBS are, you know, trying to do some deal with the Warner Brothers and all this, and so that was a factor in how CBS reported the news because they didn't want that to get all messed up. But no, it is illegal to knowingly slander or libel somebody. It's just that absence of malice thing.
Right.
You have to.
And I believe, you know, a lot of the you know, large media corporations, you know, after it's my understanding, and you being a history teacher, you know, you might be able to correct me. But a lot of these, news media corporations actually, after they classified themselves as entertainment rather than the opposite, to kind of get around that aspect.
Well, and because they could phrase things and say, well, that was our opinion. Was I mistaken in my opinion? Oops, for sure. Sorry
Right.
about that. And that kind of
But the damage is already done.
Damage is done. The retractions on the back pages where the accusations on the front. And that's social media's made this 100 times worse.
Right.
Another thing that's made it more difficult is the consolidation of these outlets. I mean, back in my day, when I was your young age, there was 80 to 100 radio stations in
Right.
the DFW area. We still have close to that many, but they're owned by about 4 companies. Same thing with newspapers. Same thing with networks. Disney owns everything practically, and so that's been an issue. And as far as kind of go back to our original point about the penal system, there's been a lot of criticism, and I hear that more from the left about the privatization of it because it does incentivize incarceration. And you got a point. I can't refute it. Texas probably has some of the highest percentage of private jails and some of the highest percentage of people behind bars in the country.
And you get, being that you get people, I forget who the name was, but it was a judge who was giving harsher penalties and sending people to a specific prison because he was getting kickbacks from it.
Right. And, he got expelled for that. But, that I know which story you're talking about. I can't remember his name either, but I remember that story. That was a fairly recent story. Would you be more focused on national issues or state issues?
I think I would be more focused going in on, my state issues first. National issues come second. Like you said, my constituents are my main priority, but I also understand the importance of delving into national matters.
Well, with very few exceptions, most of the people that are in Congress now started at a lower position, state rep,
Right.
state senator, city council, whatever. Do you plan on going that route? Because
I would love to.
Yeah, okay, good.
I wanted to get on with the Burleson PD, maybe be on city council. I think that'd be a beautiful path.
Miss Tammy Robinson is watching, according to this.
Nice.
Hi, Mom.
You're late.
Yeah, and I took your side on that argument about should you be putting those stickers on the window shield. But so anyway, back to the matter. But that's the way it normally works. Now, of course, you might get celebrities or former athletes or rich people that can fund their own campaigns. But normally there is a process of working up the ladder, and it's a career. And the thing about it is, politics, properly defined, is the art of getting things done, and the biggest need for that is the need for compromise. But now compromise is such a pejorative. It's like a compromise is not an abandonment of principle. It's
Right.
You take as much as you can get, but you're going to have to give a little bit back.
Both sides are going to be unhappy, but that is the point of the compromise.
Yeah, but we don't have that attitude in Congress.
Right.
And we used to have that attitude in the state legislature, but that's going away. But compromise is, the Founding Fathers, the whole Constitution is written based on compromise. I mean, one of the assignments I give my students is find the compromises that were made, and it's almost in every section of every article, that were put in there as after debate between the two sides of the argument. And that's why when they come out with that Constitution on September 17th, 1787, neither side were very excited about it. Washington said, better than nothing.
Right.
So that's that kind of thing. What state issues, besides the prisons, which is mostly a state issue, what else would be on your radar, so to speak?
Our farmland. I don't think foreign countries should be able to purchase our farmland that could be used to feed our people. I think Texas farmland deserves to be in the hands of Texans. The people that are, claiming residency, are people here. And a lot of countries will buy up this, perfectly usable farmland and just do nothing with it.
Right.
While we could be using it for the benefit of our people in our state.
Well, how does that square with private ownership and free enterprise, though?
I understand that, and that's the catch-22.
Mm-hmm.
I can't not understand one and understand the other. I know that compromise, it's going to be hard.
I have my concerns about foreign ownership of land, but my day it was the Japanese. Now we're talking about the Chinese primarily. And I remember when I was in high school and early college, it seemed like the Japanese were buying everything in sight. Golf courses and the Seattle Mariners, and they bought Rockefeller Center, where very famous icon in Manhattan and that kind of stuff. And we had all these concerns. Now it's the Chinese. But see, we always saw the Japanese as competitors, not as a moral or physical threat. And the Chinese, I think, are much more hostile to us, and than the Japanese ever were. And post-war, let's put it that way. But I do have concerns about that. But it's like if I own 90 acres of land and some Chinese owner company comes and says, I'll pay you twice what the next guy's going to pay you, or let's say it's an Arab country buyer. Yeah, I'm going to instead of $100 an acre, I'll pay you $500 an acre because money doesn't mean anything to me. It's going to be awful hard to ask that man to turn it down in the name of his country.
That is true.
He may be as patriotic as all get out, but I'm going to get 5 times the money or whatever. It's hard to turn it down.
It is, especially if that purchase would benefit that person.
I don't know if there's any laws on the books. I know it's been discussed, but I don't know if there's any laws that are currently active that prevents that from happening. I know it's been proposed several times, but the thing is, you look at Texas in particular, percentage-wise, we have by far the most privately owned land, percentage-wise. Not just number of acres, obviously, because of our size, but percentage-wise. Right. And you got whole states out west that are owned by the federal government practically. And and who knows what the federal government can do with that land. Right. What about this property tax issue? Is that something you've thought much about?
I have very strong viewpoints on property tax. I don't agree with it. If you tell somebody, with property tax, your house, your land is always in the hands of somebody else. You never truly have ownership. You stop paying that tax, they come after and take it from you. I don't think that's ownership. I think that's leasing or renting. I understand the aspect that, you may need a property tax in order to pay for the roads that, you're driving on within your cities. But that's just, like buying a TV from Walmart, and then, you have to pay Walmart every month to be able to use the TV you've purchased. Well, that's a subscription. That's a state subscription rather than ownership.
How would these roads be built otherwise?
I believe there are other forms, sales taxes, things like that. I think we depend on the government too much. You saw, when the hurricanes happened in, was it the Carolinas?
Yeah.
North Carolinas?
About 4 years ago.
Right. You saw the community, coming together, private citizens coming together to clear the roads. And then, you had the government stopping them, saying that they couldn't do it. Well,
yeah, I remember that.
We're doing this ourselves,
Right. FEMA was not very helpful.
Right, especially whenever you're sending your money and using your FEMA money elsewhere.
Yeah. Or there was a true basis for an accusation that they were bypassing homes that had Trump sign and that kind of stuff. And there was a couple of anecdotes that turned out to be actually true, not just made up by Fox.
Right, and we saw in these tragedies, we saw that we can do it on our own. And I believe that we depend on the government too much to tell us that we can or can't. If I see a pot road, in my driveway, I can fix that pot road. I think pothole. Yeah. I believe if my neighborhood has a pothole, I think if I get together with my neighbors, let's fix this.
Well, not everybody's quite as civic minded as you, and a lot of people think that that's the role of the government about fixing roads and things of that nature, or fire and police and things of that nature. I've talked to the mayor about this, and he has some issues with the property tax as well. Nationally or statewide, maybe is a better way to put it, the property tax issue, the opponents of it, if I understand the argument, is that basically you're taxing people on
unrealized earnings.
Unrealized earnings. That's trying. What's the word? Not unearned, but unrealized earnings. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, I got that. But on the other hand, I have a concerned about sales tax because sales tax, falls on the consumer. And for me to pay an extra $1.50 for a $100 purchase or whatever on tax, it's annoying. But for some other people, sales tax hits them pretty hard. Mm-hmm. How would we adjust for those on the lower spectrum of the income level and not have this be a burden upon them? That's always been my problem with that.
Right. I believe last time I was on, you asked me if, you found that I was a new homeowner, mm-hmm. and you had asked, would I be okay, in the instance of an increased property tax, if mm-hmm. I would be okay with an increase in fee in buying my house. Mm-hmm. And, let me ask you a question.
Please.
Would you rather pay an increased fee once or increase in your property tax every year, unrealized?
Oh, assuming the money was roughly the same, I'd probably take the fee. But then again, I can afford the fee.
Right.
You look at somebody, like my kids. They're doing decently. They're doing pretty well, but they're having a hard time getting into the home market. Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's home values and whatever else is. There's all sorts of reasons why that's the case. But yeah, having one time payment, well, I could probably do that. But if I had made less money, that might be more of a burden. As far as my other problem with the sales tax is that it's dependent upon consumption, right? Mm-hmm. And the mayor addressed this, and he says he has the facts to prove it. But I still have to be shown the data that says a recession won't cause a significant dip in revenues for the state and for the city, and we need the revenues. I mean, we need the schools to be open. We need the fire and police. We need the roads to be repaired and trash picked up, and on and on and on. And that's causes a need for revenue. Mm-hmm. So, how would you replace the revenue strictly with a property tax and increase fees? With the sales taxes, I guess I misquoted myself. You get rid of the property tax, mm-hmm. increase sales tax, and increase fees. Would be how you would handle that?
I'm sure that there's more research that I could do. I'm not fluent in the matter by any means, but I do have opinions, and I do have opinions that have yet to be researched, and
there's no crime in that, because the crime is if you don't care to research it. That'd be the shame. But no, I don't. I'm not an expert on every subject, I can promise you. But I am also 64, and I've had a lot of time to do this. But as a young man, I had opinions, and sometimes those opinions are based on feelings. Mm-hmm. But I am not saying that the people who oppose property taxes are in error. I just need to be convinced that their solution to an elimination of property taxes would not impact lesser income levels mm-hmm. and lessen the quality of government services, which we need.
I believe if there should be a property tax, it should be based on the value of the home at the initial purchase.
I've heard that too.
Not the my mom, she bought a home in Arlington, $200,000. Mm-hmm. The home is worth
much more
now.
Yeah.
And she's being taxed on what it's worth now, not when she bought it. And, banks, she was approved for, the expenditures of buying that house when she bought it, mm-hmm. not for, the doubling of the value of the home, not for, if that were the case, she probably wouldn't have gotten approved or might not have.
Well, I've been in my home since 1991. So mm-hmm. if it ever went to that process, my bill would go down substantially.
Mm-hmm. And you get instances like that where people are taxed out of their homes. Mm-hmm. And that's another one of the main reasons why I'm, not in favor of the property taxes, mm-hmm. because people are getting taxed out of their homes. Yeah,
that's been and it's not an unjustified mm-hmm. View of it, because that's kind of what's driving a lot of it.
Right.
I know that as soon as my wife and I turn 65, our property taxes, we'll have a substantial increase in the exemption and all that, and and things of that nature. But as far as that idea that they're being taxed at home, I hear that a lot, and I remember when Dwayne Burns represented this area in the state legislature. he was opposed to the property tax. And Helen Kerwin, from what I understand, has endorsed several different versions of an elimination of property tax.
Right.
My friend, Ms. Kim Jones, we haven't really spoken directly on it, but she says that the property tax process leads to inflated or unfair valuations. And so that's why she's doing that seminar tonight and whatnot to try to promote people being aware of their rights and whatnot. But the property tax issue is going to be the number one hit parade topic on the legislature next spring, I can promise you.
Right.
You know, vouchers are one thing. Maybe we can talk about vouchers. I mean, you and I both have a common background in Burleson High School and whatever else, public education. When the voucher system was being discussed, how did you approach that?
Can you delve into that a little bit more?
Well, the voucher system basically is going to give tax credits to people that you take their money. It's that use a certain amount of money for private or homeschooling. Now, the money isn't going to the school.
Right.
It's going to the people, and they can choose. But, you know, the vast majority of people that are going to be choosing private schools are going to be choosing private faith-based schools.
Right.
That was always the argument. It's church, state, and all this other business. But so they got around that by saying, look, we're not giving money to Southwest Christian. We're giving money to a parent who goes to Southwest Christian.
Right.
Okay, and if they don't want to go there, they want to go to, you know, some other school that's, you know, non-religious, get after it. And if you do homeschooling, there's a smaller amount. But
Is it 30,000?
No, it's 10,000.
10,000?
And then 1,000 for homeschooling.
Okay.
All right, which is big in Burleson.
Right.
You know, I can't tell you how many students or ex-students that come. And hey, how you doing? How's the kids? Great. Where do they go to school? Well, Mr. Allard, we homeschool, and they're embarrassed to tell me because they don't want to hurt my feelings. I'm like, my feelings ain't hurt. You know, you do what you want for your kids. I mean, it don't mind. Even if my feelings were hurt, it's immaterial. But I had concerns about it.
Right.
My biggest concern about it is that a lot of the people that get the benefit of the vouchers don't need it. Or, you know, I taught 3 years after I left BHS, retired from BISD. I taught 3 years at Southwest Christian, and there were some kids there of moderate to middle income. They were going there because grandparents are kicking in, that kind of stuff. But a lot of the kids came from fairly well-to-do families, and somehow they were affording Southwest Christian before a voucher ever came about. And so my second problem is, who's going to get the benefit of the voucher, the student or the schools? Kind of as a, you know, as an example, remember when Mr. Biden wanted us to buy electric cars, right?
Yes.
Gave us $7,500 to do it with. Who got the money?
The corporations.
You betcha. Because what did they do?
They increase the price.
You betcha. And that's
Just like schools.
That's what
schools will do the same thing in colleges.
And colleges have been doing that, making it ridiculous. You know, I have my beloved Baylor hat on, all this stuff. It really does break my heart to see how much Baylor costs, because that was not the intention to be that expensive and that exclusive.
Right.
I don't care how much in scholarships and whatnot, it's still expensive. TCU, SMU, even state colleges. And that's what I'm afraid will happen with the voucher system. That basically the private schools say, well, okay, this family has 2 kids here. They got $20,000 coming to them. We can raise the tuition $4,000 or $5,000.
Because they know that they'll get that.
You'll get the piece of that action. Yeah. As far as the proponents of the voucher system, they look to what they consider to be the failures of the public school system. And that's a whole other conversation topic. Do you feel like Burleson High School failed you?
I believe I failed myself. Okay. I can't, you know, like I said, you know, going into college, I wasn't much of an academic. You know, I was, you know, an athlete and didn't see really the value of being the academic until I started, you know, my own journey. And I should have been more focused in school. I should have been, you know, doing the things that I knew that I should do. Should have been listening to my parents whenever they, you know, told me to come home and do some homework. But I believe if there was, and there definitely was, you know, unpreparedness going into college, it's because I didn't take it seriously.
Well, I, you know, teach at DBU, and I get freshmen like that. Like, this is the first time they've ever heard of the concept of, you know, reading. What are you talking about? You know, and that kind of stuff. Or they think that attendance is, you know, a voluntary thing.
Right.
So, you know, and when I was in high school and college and such, I mean, it wasn't like we were all dressed in ties and, by God, I want to learn everything I can. You know, we had some slackers in our midst, and I occasionally was slack with them. But so you know, the good old days, you know, not a whole lot is different. The problem a lot of people have with the public schools, I'm kind of arguing on the pro-voucher side now, is that, first of all, they're not producing the type of product, so to speak, the student that is prepared either for college, military, or workforce.
Right.
But you have kids that are basically dang near illiterate getting graduation diplomas.
Right.
And you also have the arguments about the politicalization of education, which, to me, I spent all that time in Burleson High School, and if I was politicizing my students, I did a piss poor job of it. If you saw the Facebook postings, most of my students are to the left of me, and then so if I just did a really bad job. Miss Robinson here says the curriculum needs to be updated. Here's another thing that a lot of people don't like about the public schools. And some school districts that try to address this, and that is, you live here, you go there. Okay. Now in Burleson, if you live in the Burleson system, which is bigger than BISD, by the way, you could choose the elementary school or the high school, whatever. Right. Now you couldn't do that in your day, but now if you wanted to go Centennial, you could, even if you lived in the BHS zone.
Well, my parents actually lived right behind Centennial, and you know, I had my coach from Burleson High School actually want me to come play for him, so I got the choice.
Who's this? McElroy?
Gary McElroy.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
okay, I remember him. Yeah, I remember his staff. You know, we didn't hang out much with. You know, he's the head coach. He's over there. I'm in some grunt in the classroom, but I taught with a lot of his staff.
He had a weather machine, pretty sure. He changed the weather whenever practice needed to be done.
Well, that's good. Well, so those are the arguments. I do have concerns about the voucher system, that it's going to be siphoning money from one system to another system and to people that already have the means to afford this choice. That's my biggest concern about it. And now they start off saying, well, we're going to limit the income levels and we're going to limit to, you know, who's going to get it. But I've also read the law, and 4 years from now, that limit is 5 times higher or 4 times higher, something like that.
Right.
So there'll be more money available. And so there's some issues involved. We haven't even talked about national events. Josh, you got anything going on in the next 10 minutes?
10 minutes should be all right, yeah.
How about an hour? Okay, all right. You're busy, huh? All right. I just want to also on a national issue, and that would be Iran. What's your thoughts on that?
I think we need to stop looking. I mean, you know, we just signed, Trump signed a peace treaty or ceasefire.
It's a memorandum of understanding, which is basically a framework which to discuss things.
I don't think Iran is trustworthy, and we should not be speaking as such. They are, you know, they fund terrorist organizations, Hezbollah, Hamas, you know, all over the world. And, you know, first day of this ceasefire, you know, they broke it. You know, they launched missiles into Iran, Hezbollah, and I don't think it's quite fair. You know, one of the, if I'm not mistaken, one of the things that Iran wanted to include in the peace deal was, you know, Israel, you know, can't defend itself.
Right.
And if somebody is throwing grenades into my house, I'm going to throw them back. You know, if they're coming from another house, I'm going to throw it right through the front door. You know, I'm worried about my family. I'm not worried about who else is in the house. But on a grander scale, I can understand, but I don't think it's quite fair.
I have a lot of issues with the memorandum as well. Are we ever going to get to a treaty of sorts? I don't really think so, because yesterday, Vance comes out and says they've agreed to inspections. This morning, the headline in the Washington Post is Iran's like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, they said that. We never said that. So that, you know, 12 hours after the vice president says we've had a breakthrough on inspections, Iran comes back and says we never agreed to anything like that.
I think that's intentional. You flood the airwaves, you know, with so much information that people don't know what to believe, and it takes credibility away from each thing, even if it may be true.
My problem with the Iran situation is when it started in late February, being the constitutionalist I am, I said, wait a minute, where's Congress and all this? Where they consulted, whatever else. All of a sudden, they found out the same way we did, which is in the news, right? Iran's been a threat for 47 years. I was in high school when they took over the embassy and whatnot. I was a junior in high school, and it was a dominant theme for the rest of that Carter administration. And I think they are a threat, not just to Israel, but to us, And the idea of them having a nuclear weapon is not the same as, say, North Korea having one. I don't like them having it either, but I don't think they're going to drop one on us. My problem with Iran having a nuclear device is that not so much they're going to launch it, but they would smuggle it into Times Square and something like that. So I was like, okay, I understand this is not the process I would have chosen, but I also understand the threat.
Right. I think I think we should believe them when they tell us what they want to do. Whenever you have, leaders of that government, in that government, saying specifically what they would do should they get that nuclear weapon or enriched uranium, they're telling us they will destroy the West. And I think, in that aspect, they mean what they say. They fund terrorist organizations worldwide, shipping Houthis, they fund all these terrorist organizations that over the years have killed thousands of, United States citizens. They've taken so much money from the global market in terms of trade. So, in terms of, when they say we will harm Americans, when they say they will destroy the West, should they get these nuclear weapons, I think we should believe them. And I think we should take them at their word because they've proven by funding terrorist organizations worldwide, they do mean it.
Are you disappointed in Mr. Trump in this?
I think we should have gotten a much better deal.
I'm disappointed. I'm not a Trump fan. Okay, I'll say it right up front. And I get a lot of static about that. I get called comrade because of that. But what's
right.
And somebody I know who's listening is probably laughing right now. But, he comes and says we need to prevent them getting a nuclear weapon. We need to take away their ballistic missiles. In his first term, he was adamant about the missiles. Can't let them have ballistic missiles. And now, last week, he says, they're entitled to have ballistic missiles. I mean, Saudi Arabia has them. I should let Iran have them. The whole point of the war 4 months ago was
a lot of wish-wash.
Yeah. To get rid of the ballistic missiles. And now he's trying to get credit for opening the Strait of Hormuz, which was open 4 months ago. And now we're in a situation where he said, well, for the next 60 days, there won't be any toll charge. But after that, it's open game. We have basically created a situation where that Strait of Hormuz, which is international waters, is now considered to be under Iranian control. And they could pose fees and tolls. And he wants credit for opening up something that was already open and relatively untroubled, let's put it that way. You had the Houthis doing crap, but the Iranians themselves didn't. But now he wants credit for that. And then we're going to be putting in money. We've already given them some money. We've unfrozen some sanctions, unfrozen some assets. And now he's talking about a $300 billion rebuilding program. This whole thing is just like astounding to me. And he is belittling those that supported him in the first place. Because when he says we're going to do this, this, and this, Lindsey Graham and others were saying, you're right, let's go get them. Now that he's kind of walked back on all that, he's calling those people, well, they're just being stupid and foolish for criticizing me.
I wouldn't, I support Trump, but I also, there are things that are hard to defend in certain circumstances, of course. It's a little hard for me to defend some things that happen. And sometimes it's a lot easier. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that I don't think I regret my choice in voting. I think, the alternative would have been a little more on the far side.
See, and President Harris handled the situation. I would not be giving me much confidence, I can tell you that.
Right.
Or that idiot Waltz is vice president.
And I mean, people act like, this aggression toward Iran, is just, specific to Donald Trump. But, whenever Hillary Clinton was running, she was saying that she's going to, bomb the mess out of Iran, that they can never have nuclear weapons. And it's something that every presidential candidate has talked about, really.
Well, I've read the comparison with Obama's deal with this deal, and the biggest difference is the amount of money that's being offered. It's considerably more than Obama did. And that's... I thought that deal with Iran in 2015 was one of the worst things in the Obama administration. I really thought, you were kidding me that you're going to trust these people to tell you the truth about their situation on their nuclear weapons and enrichment programs and whatever else. You're going to take their word for it. This deal, I think, in some ways is worse because we're not getting any guarantee of elimination of that program, nor are we getting any kind of agreements about Israel's security, about our Arab neighbors' security, Arab partners. And now we potentially going to have this Strait of Hormuz. This is going to happen again next time Iran gets irritated about something.
Absolutely. And I agree.
And so I got some real concerns. If another thing is, Trump said we'd have this thing over in 10 days. And if that actually had happened, I would have said, well, okay, I get that they didn't follow exactly the Constitution. But you can also make the argument that the Iran presented itself as a threat, and there is constitutional provisions, that's the word, are constitutional provisions that allow the president to act in dire emergencies, kind of thing. And so you can make that argument then. And that was the argument I got, and is there basis in that argument that the Iran posed a real threat and the president had to act? So I could accept that argument, but what I can't accept is that the foundations or the premises that we went to this war in February 28th now are being totally discarded. And Trump is acting like, I never said those things. And when they show him on tape saying those things, he gets all upset with the reporter. So, I never said ballistic missiles. I never was interested in regime change. And you read the quotes right from the very beginning, that's exactly what they were about. That's what really bothers me the most. And it bothers me that people are saying, yeah, you're right. No, he's not right. You said this, now you're saying that. And you're calling people who call you out on that as stupid and other pejorative terms. That's what bothers me. I'm glad you let me say that. I've been wanting to say that on the air for a while now, but I really couldn't say that. Okay, let's talk about donations to the poor. And darn it, Trump. Speaking of poor, well, that's another topic. But it does remind me about the needy. I like to segue here. I've been pushing this on the end of the show is about the food pantries here in the area, House of Hope, the Promises community, and Harvest House. They need groceries because with summertime the business picks up. Right. A lot of kids stuff. If you say, well, what do they need? Well, stuff that kids can make when mom and dad is at work. Right. I love SpaghettiOs. And that
classic staple.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't.
Or beef ravioli. Chef Boyardee. Go grab you some. We'll get the generic kind. It's the same thing. It's cheaper. The
Those
house
old
brand.
Chef Boyardee commercials when they'd follow you home from the grocery store. The cans.
Good stuff. That's probably why. Got this around, but there you go. But I'm just saying, guys, we need to help them out because when school's not in, there's not many free lunch opportunities. The schools aren't open, and so they need all the help they can get. And so if you're at the store, buy a few extra cans. If you want to give them money, they'll take that because they also help financially. And what my friends at these institutions say, they get a lot of people come in that can't pay the electric bill, or they get because they had their car broke down and cost them $1,500 or whatever, and they can't pay the electric bill, or the doctor's bill came in. And we think of their clients as, maybe people that found under the bridge. That's not it at all. A lot of these are working class people. These are working people with jobs. So there you go. Remember the Property Tax Justice Foundation tonight at 1511 West Henderson in Cleveland. Thank you, Josh. You want to do this again sometime?
I would.
Okay. Well, I'll let you finish the show. Tell us, I don't know, just some sort of ending statement about your overall hopes and views of America.
What I want, people to understand is, more than I am a Republican, a lot of people ask me, my party is the party of the cross, and I will vote based on who I believe upholds those values more. And I do believe that there is one side that upholds it more than the other. You have one side that, is wanting to put 10 Commandments back in classrooms, have students, read these passages from the Bible. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think as a country, the further that we've gotten away from Christ, the further that we've gotten away from the teachings of the Bible, the more unhealthy our society has become. My dad used to be able to take his rifle and shotgun, put it in the bed, in the back of his truck at school, and we didn't have these things.
Well, I remember that when I started teaching in 1990. I said, "Hey, you got a hunting rifle in the back of the truck." No one cared.
Right. And I think, whenever these morals and, foundations are abandoned, you get a lot of that instability, a lot of that, and a lot of the problems that follow with that. So what I want people to understand is, more than I'm a Republican, I'm a Christian, and being a Christian, I want to help people around me. I used to hate, the idea of being used, but after I found more in my faith, I get excited about it. I have the opportunity to help somebody now. Are their intentions, the purest? No, but will this help them in the long run? Yes. And, I get true joy out of helping people. And, that's something that I want to continue to do. And that's something that I never want to lose sight of.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Josh, for coming in early. I know it's tough to get out of the rack sometimes. Next week, I have Rich Hooper from 88.3 The Journey. They're at their end of their fiscal year. We're going to talk about that. Tuesday's open date. I may start my ran thin because I'll know more then. And then we're taking a few days off for the 4th of July. Right now, I imagine Miss Tammy is wiping the tears from her eyes after listening to you talk. What do you think? Put prayer and discipline back in school discipline.
There you go.
And I can tell you, the thing about, well, we'll be here for another 20 minutes when we talk about those things as well. And Josh is like, TikTok, bro. So anyway, we're going to do this again. I enjoyed it very much, and I appreciate your perspective. And then what I really appreciate is your not dogmatic view of things. That I wish more people had your. You have your opinions, but you understand the entire question as opposed to just your side of it and that kind of thing.
The debate for me is just as important as, it's not just about me stating my opinion or, things like that. It's also about understanding and learning. I think the both go hand in hand. You can't understand somebody's viewpoint without listening.
You got that right.
You can't always listen if, you're the first one to speak in the room.
I heard that. Okay, we're going to do this again. After the show, we'll find out a mutually agreeable time, and we'll see y'all next Monday with Rich Hooper.